Hey guys, I'm just going to light a candle before I start, and this is one of my favourite candles which I thought I'd share with you at the moment. It's by Candle Crush, which is a New Zealand candle brand, and it's called Singing in the Rain. It's white grapefruit, vanilla bean, a splash of sandalwood and musk for a hint of earthiness, and you have a candle full to the brim with fresh rainwater, so it's supposed to smell like rain. Just gonna... I'm so hardcore, I can't even use a lighter. I just have that burning, and it smells really lovely, and it reminds me a little of Christmas because that was the candle we were burning around Christmas time. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about some stuff that's kind of, I don't know, rattling around in my brain at the moment. And I think one of the main things that's rattling around in my brain is stuff to do with women. And I'm a woman in leadership in a church, and I wanted to to touch on that and what that's like, and a few of the questions that might go with that, that people might have about being a woman leading in a church, whether it's in a pastor's position or anything like that, and even maybe relevant for women who are like leaders in their workplace or things like that. And I've been in the role that I'm in for a couple of years now. I'm a youth pastor, and so the challenges that go with that as being a woman. One of the first challenges would definitely be loneliness. People don't really talk a lot about the fact that being a leader, wherever you're at, is actually often a bit lonely. And what I mean by this is that if you're leading a large group of people, you're at the front and they're behind you, you're leading them physically. There's a guy across the road who I'm pretty sure is staring at me. Oh well. And what that can mean is that you're out ahead and they're following, and it doesn't mean that they're like mindlessly following or that they're sheep or whatever. It just means that you're out here and they're back here, and they're going with you, but because you're out here, sometimes you're on your own, and sometimes you see things differently to other people. Sometimes people treat you differently because you're a leader. They treat you, there are things that they would say or that they wouldn't say because you're a leader. They talk around you differently. Sometimes, a lot of the time in a leadership position, they'll come to you with something that they need because you're the leader and you provide for things that they might need. So they don't like it's, and sometimes it isn't a two-way street thing, it isn't mutual, and so they'll come to you with something but you can't go to them with something because that's not how it works. They don't want the person who's leading them to come to them with problems because they want to get what they can get out of you, and that's totally fine. But sometimes that means that you don't have a lot of really tight, close-knit, real friends around you. You have maybe a few, or you might, for even a season, you might feel like you don't have any. So one of the things about being a woman is we love to have our friends, our girlfriends, and our close-knit group of friends, but it can be quite hard if you feel like you don't have that support, and there might be a season where you don't, but God definitely rises up people around you that can support you, and there will be people around you that you can really lean into to support you during that time, whether that's other older women in faith, or if you're a couple or something, an older couple in faith, or people who are doing similar stuff to you but maybe like a town over or things like that, and you can really gain stuff from each other. I think one of the most powerful things for women is when we lean into each other as women and we support each other as women, when we come together as women under the banner that is Jesus, and we really support one another. That we don't, because the way of the world, it almost seems with a lot of girls sometimes, is that we're perceived as that our relationships are really catty or gossipy or whatever, and the enemy would love that to be our story as women, that we would be known as being women, that women are known as people who gossip and spread rumors, or are catty or don't get on very well with each other, because there's something that happens, I reckon, between, like, not to over spiritualize it, but I think there's something spiritual that does happen when we support each other, especially as women coming together, that breaks that and goes against that and cuts through culture. And I think that's one of the things that can draw other women to the church, is that these women don't treat each other like crap. They treat each other well, and they empower one another, and they support one another, and that's the body of Christ. That's what we're designed to do. There's a kid yelling down the street, but whatever. The other things about being a woman in leadership is sometimes you get treated a little bit differently. It's going to be a given, and I think sometimes we can kind of get a little bit feeling like our arguments aren't valid as women, that you can get a feeling, and guys might disagree with this, but as a woman in a leadership role, it can feel like our points aren't valid or our argument isn't valid when we feel like we are being overlooked because we're a woman. And I just want to unpack that a little bit, because I don't want that to come across in the wrong way at all. Because for the most part, the way the world is that we're incredibly progressive, and we are more about empowering each other and more about empowering women and letting women rise up into leadership, etc, etc, etc. But for a lot of churches, women in leadership is still actually a relatively new concept. I even find when I go to meetings which are for example, I go to a pastor's meeting for other youth pastors in our region, and we all meet together and talk about youth pastory things, and I look around that room and I think interns and other youth workers will go, but I think in terms of people who are in the role as youth pastor, I think there is one other. To the last one that I went to, there was one other female, maybe two, and just to put that into perspective, there was about 15 youth pastors in that room. So I'm not saying that that is the same for every church environment, but what I'm saying is that the way history would have it and the way things are at this point in time is that pastoring is a predominantly male profession. That doesn't mean that women aren't good at it, it's just the way that it's been for a long time, and it's starting to change, which is awesome. But just at this point where we are now, it's predominantly a male job role, and that's just the way it is, and the way it's been for a really long time. And for a long time, women weren't really considered for this kind of role. It was more of a men's role, and it dates back to churches seeing men as being the head of the house and the spiritual head of the family and things like that, and that's where the connection really comes in. And I, as a young woman youth pastor, I've found sometimes that I felt like what I've had to say has come across or not being considered as much because I'm a woman. Also because I'm young, but because I'm a woman, that it doesn't get taken on board as much as if I was a guy. And that is just because of all of the history, the church history that goes with being part of a church, is that if you've never had a woman in the role, then it's going to have teething issues and things like that go with it. It's just natural. It's not sexist, it's not rude, it's not intentionally derogatory or anything like that. It is just teething issues that go with the role. And I've found sometimes that I've said something and it hasn't settled down into the group that well, because people don't always understand my point of view or respect my point of view, partly because I'm young, but partly actually because I'm a woman. And that's something that I'm willing to work through, and I think as women it's something we all need to journey through, because I think it's really important that it's something we come under together, that we really support one another and say, actually, this isn't where it needs to be. It's not awful, but it's not where it needs to be. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important that women in their role have leadership around them that is really empowering to women, is really supportive, but is also comfortable with being challenged by women, or letting women have a higher sense of authority than them. If the church is not comfortable with that, then it's going to be a really hard battle, and it's something I find is a little bit difficult as well, is really figuring that out. Figuring out what's important to fight for and what's important to just leave, without coming across a certain way. I've also felt like sometimes I've had to change the way I say things or the way that I articulate myself, so I come across as less feminine, and that is something that I am personally working through, is that I don't want to have to hold myself back or hold myself to a different standard because of my gender, but it's something that for myself I have to battle with kind of on the regular, is that I actually need to be more comfortable in being a woman sometimes and behaving in the way that I naturally would, and not trying to fight against that all the time, because sometimes I find myself doing that. Like, I'm like, oh man, I really feel emotional and passionate about this particular thing, but I don't want to get too emotional because then I'll come across too feminine, and that's just another teething issue that goes with that. So I'm going to do a few more videos on the topic of women in leadership from my perspective, and I'd love to get the conversation going. If that's something you're into, you can comment down below, or message me, or contact me on Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is that you like. I'll put all of my information down below. Look forward to more, watch this space, and yeah, I mean, if you are a woman and you are in a leadership role, or you want to be, or you feel like you are called to be, it doesn't mean that you are less or that you aren't because you're a woman. It means that what you offer is something new to that situation. Women in the world still get paid less than men do in a lot of roles. Women still get treated differently in a lot of roles, and a lot of men would disagree that equality is not where it needs to be. They would say it is. They would say women have equal rights now, but it's arguable in different areas of the world and things like that. But I think even in the most progressive parts of the world, it is not where it needs to be. I think women are still oppressed. I think women are still not treated completely equal to men, and I think that that's something that we need to start talking about in the church. Yeah, so stay tuned for the next videos. If you want to contact me or reach me or see of any of the stuff that I'm up to in my church or in my youth ministry, you can contact me, and all of my information will be down below. But until next time, have an awesome day, and if you're a woman in ministry, you are doing a good job. You are needed, you are valued, and you are bringing something new to your environment. And be encouraged, because although these are some of the challenges that we have, they totally don't outweigh the benefit of having a woman in a leadership role, because we offer something new and we are important. Bless you guys.